Excellent. Okay. Well, we're going to move into our final segment of our March for Life 2016 conference this morning. And I know many of you have come to hear particularly about this, how to make talking with your members of Congress a little bit easier. So this next session, Capitol Hill 101, is all about giving you tools to be able to interact with your members of Congress, in particular about the kinds of things that we've been hearing about all this morning. So I'm going to make an introduction of one of my favorite people, Tom McCluskey. I get the opportunity of working with Tom every day at the March for Life, and he's really smart and does amazing things, and he also keeps us laughing, as I think that you'll see very soon here. Tom is our VP of Government Relations at the March for Life. He has frequently been voted as one of the most effective lobbyists in Washington, D.C. For many years before coming to the March for Life, Tom worked in this field, but specifically for about 10 years, he worked at Family Research Council's, he headed up Family Research Council's legislative side. And one funny little tidbit about Tom is that he was once voted by Keith OBrien, when he was still on MSNBC, as one of the worst people in the world. And that was for his claim to fame. We're very proud of Tom for that. And that was because of his views and stance on the Terry Schiavo case a number of years ago. So without further ado, I turn to Tom McCluskey.
That's the last time I let my in-laws vote on anything, especially with Keith Olbermann. Well, Jeannie gave a little bit of my background, except if I'm going to talk about something like this, I figure, yes, I know you're looking at me, you're thinking, okay, the guy is really good looking, he's obviously very smart, his humility just pours out of him, but who is he to tell us about something like this? Well, I'm someone I've been involved in politics for most of my life. I'm from upstate New York, worked my first campaign when I was 6 years old. My dad was running for local office. After graduating high school with a political science and history degree, I put that to use for bartending for a couple of years, which actually helps me a lot more down here probably than the degree actually does. But then I decided there was no jobs up in New York. Down here in D.C., they're probably dying for somebody with a political science degree and who thinks he knows everything. So I came down here, and I first worked for George H.W. Bush. Worked on his campaign and worked with the Republican National Committee. Back when I was more of a party guy than I was an activist, which I slowly turned into. Lobbied for a number of years, worked for a number of years for an oil company. Then I worked for a fiscal organization called National Taxpayers Union for about 5 years. And then decided after working on issues like big oil and the IRS, I wanted to work on less controversial issues, so I went to a place called Family Research Council, where I lobbied on the marriage issue and the life issue. And everybody loves people who lobbies on those issues. And then I was very blessed, after 10 years there in running their lobbying arm, to be asked by Jeannie and the board if I would come on and to help form the C4 for the March for Life. The March for Life C4 actually was the first organization created by Nellie Gray. However, as time went on, the paperwork went to the side, and the march itself is run by the C3, and I was asked to bring back the C4. And I did, and one reason I did was because both Jeannie and I and Patrick Kelly, our chairman, kind of shared the same view that the pro-life movement is one of the most greatest movements out there. However, we need revitalization. We need to do things a little differently. And one thing I noticed working for a number of years, lobbying on these issues, was that we weren't really doing the lobbying that we were supposed to be doing. It was more relationship at the higher levels lobbying and then demanding votes instead of going to the people with the power, the voters, and educating them. And from that grew Capitol Hill 101. Now, Capitol Hill 101 is actually, now, if anybody answers yes to this, you might win a prize. Is anybody here from Washington State? Oh. You can talk to Bethany about your prize. Is anybody here from Florida? Okay, you guys are crazy. Have you seen it outside? But back to Washington State. In Washington State, Washington State was just voted and is normally voted the most pro-abortion state in the United States. However, a young man who runs a family policy council out there, and that's an organization that fights for our values within most of the states, Joseph Backholm wanted to do something a little differently because it's like, look, we're in the minority, these people don't agree with us. And he started something called Olympia 101. And it's kind of a reaction to give people an outlet, because people want to do more. That's one thing that the Tea Party movement and the Occupy movement, had in common, because there were a lot of differences. They occupy things in August, we tend to do things in January, and we tend to try to abide by the law. Except one thing the Tea Party folks and the Occupy folks have in common is they're both very angry. And who has a better right to be angry than pro-lifers for everything that's going on? Except also, we are the most happiest bunch out there. Because we're not just fighting against abortion, we're fighting for life. And that's a happy thing. And that's what Joseph thought in Washington State, and so he started this thing, and I've tried to copy it here as well, where throughout the year, if you come to Washington, D.C., here, or if you were in Washington State, and you went to the state's capital in Olympia, they would teach you, not on the specific issues as much, but more on how to talk to your member, to more humanize the process. That too many people are just like, oh, those people, I'm one of those people in Washington, things are never going to change. Why even bother? Unfortunately, that attitude also trickles down to the local levels, where things can change. And trust me, as you'll hear, things can change on the federal level too, but it's got to be a bottom-up process. And one thing that, for the qualifications for this lobbying, is that you go forward with a good attitude. Yes, these people know you work for them, they don't need to be reminded of it. These people are your employees, and you would not go and talk to your employees and yell and scream at your employees, no matter how angry you were. Your employees wouldn't stick around all that long, or in the case of government workers, they're going to say, very nice, thank you very much, and just write it down. Now, Joseph did this in a pro-abortion state, and what he found was, like, he would go in the lobby, and when a big thing was coming up on the life issue, the Planned Parenthood folks would come in and do the drop-by lobbying, saying, oh, that other side, they're really evil, they're real mean. And the staffers who might agree with Planned Parenthood would just be like, no, actually, I just met them the other day, and they're actually pretty nice, they brought me cookies. So, not that you always have to bring cookies. And what they found in Washington State was, the most pro-abortion state in the nation, is that when they were trying to push an abortion mandate, something that, now in California they do have this, but something that would force even Christian churches to pay for abortions, it was stopped in Washington State, the most pro-abortion state in the nation. When they wanted to do a hearing on parental consent when it comes to abortion, and parental notification when it comes to abortion, they had a fair and balanced hearing on this issue. And a lot of it, I believe, is because of these relationships they built with people they don't agree with. So what we need to do, though, is learn how to talk to the people not only we agree with, but those that we disagree with. Now, when it comes to lobbying, there are two kinds of lobbying. One is the money lobbying. That's where, like, you're Exxon, and you can write $1 million check to your member of Congress, and that'll get you a meeting with some members of Congress. Now, is there anybody in here who can write $1 million check? Please, anybody. One of these times somebody's gonna say, I can't do it. Not today. And you can make it out to March for Life, that's spelled TOMMCCLUSNY. Like in the pro-life movement, that's not where our strength is. Our strength is what we see every January 22nd. It's in the grassroots, it's in the people. And it's them that we're trying to motivate today and trying to motivate throughout the year to get them in touch, to talk with members of Congress, and also take it back to the local level. Now, before I introduce Eric, I usually ask what are the best ways to reach your member of Congress or your state legislator. Because it used to be a letter. Letters nowadays, especially after September 11th, if you send a letter, they might get it around Christmas time in 2017 through the process it goes through. The absolute worst I've found by experience, I don't want to give details, but do not hang out at their houses hiding in the bushes. Parent creeps them out, doesn't change their mind. But if a letter is all you can do, send a letter. And there's a number of great organizations, like SBA List, Focus on the Family, Family Research Council, Americans United for Life, that can give you information to put into a letter to inform them. The next best is actually, what's better than a letter is actually a fax. Because this is government, so it's always going to be a little bit behind the times. I'm just surprised we aren't using teletypes or Morse code. But a fax is a good way to send a letter. Somebody in the staff will see that, and they will have to categorize. Here's somebody on this bill or on this issue. This is where somebody from your district stands. The next best is then an email. Emails are also easy to categorize, and at least you know you will be noticed, and they do listen. Best is a phone call, first to the DC office. But that can be, and one thing that groups try to do is try to shut down the phone lines here in DC. So the DC at Capitol Hill, they can handle thousands of calls, if not hundreds of thousands of calls at a time. If you really want to be effective at a time, call the district office. 100 calls to a DC office might get you noticed. 10 calls to a district office actually gets you noticed. That's a busy day in a district office. Visiting the DC office is also very important when you're in DC. And what we'd love to do throughout the year is, if you're coming to DC, let us know. Because we can hook you up. If you're coming with a large group, we can do one of these specific trainings for your group, bring them right over to the member of Congress, help introduce them to the member of Congress, if it's a friendly or not. And other groups are willing to do that as well, and especially SBA Liz, Susan B. Anthony Liz. And then the most effective probably is visiting the district office. And a lot of these times you're going to meet a staffer, except if you want just a couple of minutes with a member, a helpful hint is tell them you'd love a picture with the legislator. There's not a politician in the world who will turn down a chance for a picture. And that'll give you 2 or 3 minutes to talk with this member of Congress or this legislator to let them know on some of these issues. Now, to further elaborate on a lot of these things, I want to first introduce a young man who I've gotten to know over the last couple of years. As he works for the group I kept on mentioning, Susan B. Anthony List is one of their lobbyists up on Capitol Hill. Susan B. Anthony List, and I'm sorry if there are other organizations in here, except they are the most effective legislative group out there, well-rounded, working on political, the PAC issues, working on campaigns, all the way up to now working on legislation, and also they have an education arm with the Charlotte Lazier Institute. So please, if you welcome Eric, who's from Maryland, so he did not, and now lives in New Jersey, so he did not have to travel far. Eric Schmidt from Susan B. Anthony.
Thank you, Tom. I actually don't live in New Jersey, but I got married in last October to my wife who's from New Jersey, so I guess I'm kind of there now. So here we go, by marriage, that's right. So again, my name is Eric Schmidt. I'm the Legislative Director of the Susan B. Anthony List. We're an organization that was founded and dedicated to electing pro-life women legislators, so electing them to Congress, as well as statewide offices like the Attorney General, things like that. So we get involved in elections in order to get these, pro-life heroes. We have women who have that ability to talk about these issues much differently than folks that look like Tom McCluskey, a little better, a little more effective. So in 2014, we were involved in several states. Basically, our objective is to build a grassroots organization in competitive congressional districts and states. In the last election in 2014, we were involved in 46 elections. We had 37 wins. We invested $15.25 million in the 2014 cycle. We had over nearly a million live voter contacts. We knocked on 500,000 doors, and we sent out 1.3 million pieces of campaign literature. So in the states that we were involved in, including North Carolina, where we had Tom Tillis win, and some other states, we were able to get to pro-lifers who were involved, who were grassroots activists, and want to have an impact on the election. So now we have all these people elected. How do we know if we're effective? And the real trick is to convert political success that we're all striving for and translate it into legislative success. But the key is not to have all the people that are ginned up in the grassroots during the election season to all of a sudden unplug when they go home from the polls. So the key is to keep people plugged in, motivated, and focused in and persistent on what's going on. So what are some good ways to do that? When I ask members of Congress, when I go with my boss and some other folks, and I talk to staffers, and I talk to members of Congress, what's the best thing that we can do to promote what you're doing for life? Or what is the best way we can have an impact on in your district? And it's letting the people know who want to know what's going on. And what I mean by is letting the people know who voted me in, that are pro-life, that I'm doing the work, that we're having these votes, and that we're having an impact. And so that's a real challenge. So again, we have to keep people that are grassroots oriented, informed, and knowledgeable on the issue, which is a challenge. So what are some ways of doing that? Well, what we do is, as Tom mentioned, we help give information out to our members who contact the Hill, or we encourage them to make calls. We give them the information to their members of Congress and ask them to call on your vote, or when a vote is coming up. Some of you might get some of our emails, or emails from other organizations like National Right to Life, or AUL, or some others, FRC. But one of the most impactful things you can do is somebody that's involved in grassroots and pro-life is to actually go in and lobby and have a conversation. As Tom said, when you come to DC, make sure to visit your member of Congress. Go into their DC office and meet with them. So I assume a lot of people here have probably visited their member. We have a show of hands of people that have gone to either visit the district office to talk with their member, or visited here in DC. Okay, so we have a little bit. I would say, so I came up with a list of steps and how to go through this if you're not sure the best way. Because most people will walk into an office and they'll go, oh gosh, a member of Congress, kind of like being starstruck. Once you see them and meet them, you'll realize that you won't be starstruck anymore for most of them. So what you do is
be respectful.
Be respectful. So the best way to start is to just call the office and set up an appointment. Call in if you're representing a group. I remember when the Tea Party movement was getting started, they'd have like 9-12 groups come together, and you have local Right to Life chapters. If all of you were getting together, go in, say you want to set up an appointment. Try to do it when the members are back in town. If you can't do that, then meet with the staffer. They tend to know more about the issues at any given point in time anyway. So go in, either meet with them in the district office, or if you're close by, come in, make some time to meet in DC. So call and make an appointment is the first step. The next, probably most important thing that a member or a member of staff will want to know is, who is this person coming in to talk to me? If it's another, if it's another person like Eric who's just a lobbyist, I'm going to be really irritated. So the most valuable people that can come in and talk are constituents, people that live in the community and are active in the community, that know people that they know, work with people that they work with, particularly the staffers that work in the district offices. A lot of them are from those communities, you may know them. So letting them know that you're a constituent, you're active, point to problems or issues, how your issue is impacting the community. And if you're representing a group of people, one of the best things you could do for whoever you're going to visit is provide them with a list of all the names of the people that are coming or are outside or that you're representing, a list of the names and their addresses. Because that's the information they want. They want to be able to stay in touch with you. Number 3 is don't be nervous. Again, I said don't be starstruck. They're just human beings, as Tom said. You're technically their boss, and people in this room, you guys are well informed on the pro-life issue. You know what you're talking about. So go in and be confident. The fourth point I have is have an ask, and what I mean by that is go in, with an objective, right? A lot of times if you go in and just say, I want you to do pro-life things, or you pro-life. Here's, have you seen these, graphic pictures? But have something that you want to get accomplished. Like over the summer and the fall, we worked with a Students for Life group, and we tried to prepare them to go in to meet with the members of Congress. And the ask that we wanted them to make was, have you seen the Planned Parenthood videos? Have you seen? And if the member of Congress was there and he hadn't seen them, he would have to tell them to their face, yes or no. If the member of Congress isn't there, you can ask the staffer. Have you seen these videos? Have you talked to your boss about why these are so important? So have an objective, have something that you really want to get across. Maybe there's a bill coming up that you've heard about, and ask for really a detailed position. The 5th step I have is plan to stay in touch. If it's a flyby, it's not going to be as effective. If it's just one person coming by at one time, they say, I tried to talk to them, but you don't stay in touch, then they'll kind of forget about you. I forget what the rule is. Some people said, it takes you so many times to hear something to remember. Do you know what I'm talking about? I don't know. It's like 3. You know.
You haven't heard it enough times.
I haven't heard it enough times to remember. Yeah. So, but if you go, the more often you go by, you stay in touch. If you build a good relationship with these people, even if they are, totally opposed to what you're saying, they'll be willing to listen and have a conversation with you and keep you updated on what's going on. So I think staying in touch is one of the most important parts. Follow up with a letter. I was talking with Tom yesterday when we were preparing for the panel, and he said, if you're a local and you come visit DC, follow up with a local postcard, which I think is a great idea. It shows that you're involved in the community, you're out, you know people. Email them op-eds that you've written in the local paper. One of the most important things that we're asked to do is connect members of Congress with a lot of people in their districts that are involved in the pro-life issue. And can you get somebody to write an op-ed to show some of these pro-life things that we've been working on? Or write an op-ed yourself. If you need to question where a member of Congress is standing. So anything that's getting in the public, anything that's going on in the community, they'll want to know about. So those are extremely important, and it does bring, you will get a member of Congress's attention or their staff's attention. And then my last point that I'll make is just to reiterate what Tom said, is to be respectful of the people that you're going to meet with. We're a movement that wants to see legislative change, we want to see political success, we want to see laws change to save lives. But another aspect of this are the folks that do the 40 Days for Life and are praying outside of abortion centers and are working at pro-life clinics. And then there's the other aspect of changing hearts and minds through the way we speak to people, the way we treat people, and that we're not so mean and nasty after all. So those are my quick steps. If you have any questions, feel free to talk to me after the panel.
Thank you, Eric. Now, I do have to apologize at this point in that we're going to have a fourth speaker, a former member of Congress, somebody who's actually just joined our C4 board, Representative Anne Marie Burkle, who used to be a representative from upstate New York. And prior to that, I mean, this is a woman who went from working for Operation Rescue to working in Congress. Except because of the weather, unfortunately, she could not make it today. Now, are there any current members of Congress in the audience right now? Good, because I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Their staff are usually smarter than they are, especially on the issue that you're talking about, because members are all over the place, because they have to be. There's a lot of issues that, for some reason, DC thinks it needs to be involved in. However, staffers are assigned specific issues. And Eric and I were talking earlier about how to humanize this process. There is one member of Congress, though, I love being at pro-life gatherings, and when he walks in, it's as if Elvis walked in the building and my mom is like throwing her hotel key at him. Except Representative Chris Schmidt from New Jersey is just a pro-life champion up on the Hill. And a lot of that is because of his great staff. Personnel is certainly policy. And when you're meeting with these people, you're going to be meeting with staff, and treat them with respect. And trust me, they might be very, 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 very young, like Eric here, or very, very, very old, like myself here. Their member's going to listen to them, though, because they know that this person's job is to learn about this issue and also to relay how their constituents feel about this issue. That's why it was so important for me to include a staffer today. And I got to get a staffer from the Rockstar's office. Now, Megan McCrum has been with what is called the House Pro-Life Caucus, where Chris Smith and Dan Lipinski are the chairs, for about 3 years now.
March for Life is my anniversary.
Oh, 2 years now. If you see her at the march tomorrow, please wish her a happy anniversary. And if you have time for those cookies, she'd probably enjoy them in the cold weather. And Megan, while she works for a member from New Jersey, there's a very New Jersey heavy contingent here today apparently, she's originally from Virginia, but I would like to introduce you to one of those people you'll be sitting across the table from hopefully sometime soon, Megan McCrum.
So before I joined the dark side, I was on the other side and had to start taking lobbying meetings with these two goons. I was, part of the pro-life, I am part of the pro-life movement, but I just want to make you know that I have a little bit of credibility with being part of the grassroots and not just being part of the system. So I, worked with my Students for Life group in college, ran some pro-life camps, and have been more on the activist side of the movement, so not just, from the other side here. But it is a real honor to work for Congressman Smith. He ran for Congress when he was the age of most congressional staffers, specifically to protect the unborn and help the vulnerable of all society, and he's an incredible witness. So just shout out to my boss. But besides members like Congressman Smith, there's basically 3 categories of the members that you're speaking with, who is your member of Congress, and similarly 3 categories for the kind of staff that you're interacting with. I think this applies whether it's your state assembly or if you're talking about your representative or your senator. And it's important, whoever you're stuck with, whoever is in your zip code, that is who you will have most power as a grassroots constituent lobbyist with. You can work with some of these other great associations to influence other folks, but the person who you go to the voting booth and get to choose whether or not you vote for it, that's who you can have the most influence with. And that is true regardless of what category they might be in. whether they are a champion for life, like Congressman Schmidt, Congressman Lipinski, and the many other active pro-life members of Congress, or they might just be checking the box one way or the other, checking the box to vote pro-life, checking the box to vote pro-choice. Or they're your extreme opponents who are down there on the floor railing against the right to life, calling it a war on women, actively fighting against us at every turn. That's the field. And similarly, regardless of what the member is doing, the staff that you're interacting with is also fitting those boxes. And sometimes they don't correspond. You can have a champion member who has a staff who's just checking the box, doesn't really like this abortion issue, it's kind of gross. Or you can have a check the box member who's got a staff who's like, I really want my boss to be as pro-life as possible. And same with your extreme opponents. Let's say your only choice, you've had a member for 20 years who's always getting the Planned Parenthood endorsement and is always down there speaking against against life. But she might have staff that actually are kind of neutral on the issue and just got assigned to abortion, which is usually, frankly, the most entry-level staffers just get slotted that issue if somebody doesn't care about it so much. So in all these situations, you have an opportunity to make a difference for the political or legislative wins that Eric was talking about, but also related, even in this political field, the changing hearts and minds aspect really does matter. And sometimes I think if you can't get anything at the end of the day, you don't get the pro-life vote, you don't get what it is you want, did you, as we've sort of all spoken about today, give them a different impression of who is the pro-life movement, who are these people, our sincerity, love for the mothers and their children, just present that. You never know. We live in such a polarized society, you might be the only pro-life person they ever meet. So what are our goals in each situation? So even your champion members who are down there giving floor speeches, always at your local Right to Life rallies, they need encouragement. They need support. If you want them to stay there, there's ways to influence that don't just contribute to groups like Susan B. Anthony and their PAC. There's ways you can influence that don't relate to actual electioneering. And even champions are faced with tough votes. So we'll look at ways you can sort of support, encourage, and appreciate the hard things that they do. I realize sometimes we look 43 years, where's the movement gotten? But I'm not just trying to justify and say, oh, members of Congress are doing great. But every pro-life vote, every debate we have in committee, everything costs those members something, even those who are there just to protect the unborn. So thinking about champions and how we can support them, reinforce them. And also I do want to say that some of those champion members are unknown. They might not be giving floor speeches, but they're doing things behind the scenes. So they might look to you like they're in the check the box category. So what's the check the box? What is your outcome if you are lobbying a member who pretty much does nothing, but maybe they have 100% pro-life score or 0% pro-life score and always vote for abortion? So in that situation, similarly, you want to bring them the message fresh. They get it from the DC lobbying groups all the time, but again, you're somebody who's in their district. You vote for or against them. You are active in their district. So can you bring this message in a fresh perspective, introducing who you are and why this matters to you, and that you will not be silent, they need to know you exist, whether or not they are going to be influenced by you. And finally, with the opponents are folks who are super hostile. Again, I think the biggest thing is just to challenge a stereotype and present the information as a true individual and not like some character that's been created by the media. So a few key things. Again, Eric really went through a lot of this, but just my basic tips for however you are reaching your member of Congress, whether it's through a phone call, whether it's through an actual meeting with the staff or the member. And meeting with staff is still a good thing. Don't look down on us too much. And or sending an email, whatever the situation may be. So one, I think you really just introduce yourself again, make it known who you are, if you're a woman, if you're a young person, or if you can bring young teenagers, students for life groups with you. If you are not, we're not ageist here, but let's be real, we do have to sort of show folks that this is also who the pro-life movement is, because they do love to characterize us wrongly. And so making yourself known. always being respectful. The person who's answering your phone call is not the person who has the voting card. So, and even if they were, you know, again, changing hearts and minds and giving them the best impression we can of the movement.